Welcome back to the channel, guys, and welcome to all my new followers. This week's episode we're going to talk about Fuji Pro 400H, which, as we all know, is a film that has been discontinued a little bit over a year ago, to the dismay of a lot of photographers. Even though it was always kind of eclipsed by portrait, it was still a film, appreciated by many. My girlfriend Jamie was so nice to buy me this 5-pack a couple weeks ago, and even though I've never really shot Pro 400H much, I shot one roll, about a year and a half ago, didn't like it, then I shot another roll, started to like it better, and this third roll that I've shot, I really do love the results. Isn't that typical? It's being discontinued, and that's when we really start loving the film. But that's how things go. I took a few portraits with it, and I just wanted to hop on the computer with you guys and discuss what this film really was all about. And of course, with a title like that, a title like this is always subject to a large degree of ambiguity, and you have to decide whether or not you like that film. Of course it's super expensive, but you just have to decide whether or not it's still worth it to you. Let's hop on the computer. Guys, I feel like I have to preface when I do a review of any sort of film. I want to preface it with which chemicals I've used to develop the film. This was the Arista kit, which in my opinion is exactly the same as the Cinestill kit, but the Arista kit, you get beautiful images in that kit. And to immediately show you what this film is all about, here's a portrait I took of Jamie. I used a 43-inch white umbrella as a reflector, not to shoot through, but as a reflector. And you can see the beautiful white balance here. Here's where I feel like I nailed it. And that's the strength of this film. If you nail it, it's spot on. You get beautiful skin tones, very fine detail. It is a 400 speed film. You're going to see a little bit of grain, but that's okay. I think most of us won't mind. Interesting to note here, which is not an unremarkable little detail, but I've rated the film here at 200. I think that's where this film shines. If you overexpose it a stop, you really get beautiful skin tones. I also feel that that's what this film is designed for. It's for portraits in the studio, or maybe in really great light outside. You just get these beautiful skin tones that, in my opinion, for me personally, and that's a taste. Taste is you can't ever really argue over taste, but it's a personal taste. I do like the skin tones better than portrait. But this film was always eclipsed by portrait, and for good reason. Portrait is a good film, but the skin tones to me have always been more, just a bit more pleasing with Fuji films. And you can see that in this portrait here. Of course, it's never always fun and games with any film, and we can see that in this next portrait. This is a portrait of my son Dalen, still pleasing. But this is, in the back you can see the, above his left shoulder, the greenish sort of tones that you get when the film isn't all the way perfectly white balanced. And this is still really great white balanced, but you can see when you don't get it perfectly right, or at least within that narrow spectrum, the Kelvin value, you do get the green tones. That's where most people complain. They don't like these greenish tones. I personally don't mind, but here I used a 60-inch umbrella as a reflector, and not, as a bounce, as a reflector, basically. A little bit of a different color temperature, and then so you get some greenish tones. I don't mind. You still get pleasing skin tones, very pleasing. And this is probably also the best film, or was the best film, for people of color. You just get a little bit more life in the skin. It doesn't look so dull, so bland. Yeah, it just pops. The skin comes alive, if you will. And you can see that in this portrait of my son. Beautiful skin tones, wonderful rendition. We do see a little bit more grain. I think Portra 400 is a tad more finely grained, and if you don't see a difference between Portra and Pro 400H, it's probably due to the scanning process. Again, most films to me are best scanned at home, processed at home, and then you can really, those differences are more stark, if you will. They're highlighted a bit better. I think sometimes when you bring in a film to a lab, they're going to try to make everything look the same. And I can see how that happens with Portra 400 and Pro 400H. Of course, where the film is not so great is under overcast conditions, but which film really is. Although I really still like this portrait of this gentleman. The reason I like it is because he owns his look. He's absolutely comfortable. He's not apologetic about his look at all. He's just completely in the zone. He owns it. He really is, he set out his day with this look, and this is what it's all about for him. I asked him for a portrait. It took forever to nail focus with the 55mm lens on my Mamiya 645. But that's neither here nor there. I still think, having said that, I rated it at 200, but having said that, I still think you have pleasing skin tones with Pro 400H under these conditions. With Portra, it would have just looked just a little bit more dull. The life is, it wouldn't have been as vivid in the face, in the skin tones. Here we do see some life in the skin, and I personally do prefer that. And then this last photo, guys, is definitely not a portrait, even though this film is a portrait film, in my opinion. Of course, we do want to see if it does well under other conditions. This is a night shot. Exposed it at 8 seconds at f8, and it looks beautiful. To me, it looks really nice, really cooler tones. It's interesting though, because when I scanned it, it did look a bit warmer. People always talk about how this film is the cooler version of Portra 400, but it definitely scanned in a bit warmer, and I had to kind of bring out the cooler tones in the post-process a little bit. And I think it just looks great. It's a wonderful film. Is it the best film for nighttime photography? For me personally, not. I don't prefer it there. I think an Ultramax 400 is a lot better in nighttime photography, but they don't make that in medium format. But yeah, the portrait of my girlfriend Jamie is definitely where this film shines. Beautiful skin tones. There's a lot of dynamic range there. There's a lot of room for error, even though this isn't a shot subject to error, but there's a lot of room for error, a lot of detail being retained in the highlights. Beautiful film. If you're looking for a film that does really well in the studio, under studio lighting, for portraiture, this is absolutely the film for you. Guys, that was it for this week. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something from it. If you can, go grab you a 5-pack. It's a really beautiful film. Again, try to develop it at home. If you're not developing at home yet, try to do that and you'll get different results versus bringing it into a lab. I guarantee you'll learn to appreciate this film for what it is. Anyway, guys, I love you and I'll see you next week's episode.